All I have to say is that it's been a long time since we've had such a lengthy and detailed live stream. The Sims 4 Life and Death expansion pack was shown off for gameplay, build, buy, and cast. I will be mostly focusing on gameplay, but I do hope this review and recap is helpful. So we're going to start off with gameplay. They actually, of course, loaded into a household, and this household was meant to show off some of the main features. Something that's really noteworthy about this live stream is they actually had all packs installed while playing this. I don't know if this is correct, but that might be a first. And honestly, that's great because they were able to talk about cross-pack compatibility, but even more importantly, so far it looked like it was working fairly well. Now, keep in mind, of course, that I think a lot of bugs do occur in older save files, and I'm sure this was a fresh save. Nonetheless, it actually appeared pretty functional, and that is a good sign. The household was, of course, in Crow's Crossing. It was kind of like a haunted, like mansion kind of vibe. It had a greenhouse, which I thought was really neat. And also, of course, there was a new cemetery. They even showed off some of those new swings. All very atmospheric, and I think really something that I personally would use. Now, the story goes that Summer's husband died, and their father is also buried out on back. Also, they use these Sims, of course, to show off the new traits. Now, honestly, it's hard even in live streams to show off all fully new traits, and we did get to learn a little bit about them nonetheless. The new traits include Chased by Death, and with this new trait, you do not get a warning before being killed off. You also tend to be more self-reflective, and apparently there are some story moments, whatever that means. There's also, of course, the Macabre trait, where you are not scared of death, and you actually enjoy morbid things. You also like occults and hanging out in crypts, and you also like moonlight. Honestly, I also think this is an interesting addition, and I just am glad to see some fresh traits. Now, the other trait we have is skeptical, and you can demand proof that someone is in a cult. You can actually even be in a cult that you can doubt your own existence as an occult, which is kind of like an existential crisis. I don't know how I think about that, but that is very interesting. Anyone who is a direct baby of Grimm actually has an extended lifespan, and you have this really interesting birthmark. There's the new pet crow. You can feed it, you can talk to it, you can teach it, you can even have mimicry, and Macabre Sims can plot with it. I really do hope that actually does something meaningful, and it definitely interests me. You can also send gifts, and of course you can provoke it, which will result in you potentially dying. We also get a new lot trait, and honestly, I wish they had explained this a little bit more, but honestly, the live stream was so long anyway. So it's Hollowed Grounds, and with the Hollowed Grounds new lot trait, you have flickering lights and cold spots, and there's something called Another World Rift. Now, we didn't really get into detail, so that's a surprise they held. We don't really know what that does. Honestly, they said it is different than a haunted lot trait, and they said you can actually have both at once. The next thing up is wills. Now, with wills, you can actually receive them in the mail, and when you receive a will from someone, you can react based upon your traits and your relationship to them. It will also tell you what preferred funeral activities they want, and of course, things such as what they want to give to you or to other people. This actually does include heirlooms. Now, with heirlooms, you can find these in your inventory. You can also make your own heirlooms, and they said most objects can be made into an heirloom. With an heirloom, you can reminisce about the owner. You can call upon that sim, so that's a possibility that their ghost will appear. You, of course, can make your own heirlooms. You just click on something and you can pass it along, and you can also engrave your own personal message. Now, this is just kind of for storytelling purposes. I don't think the message actually does much of anything. Now, when it comes to the process of actually writing wills yourself, if you want to write wills yourself, there's actually this Family Day festival where you can write them, which I do find it kind of strange that it's just hanging out at a festival and say, hey, I want to write a will. But luckily, you don't have to rely on that Family Day festival. There's also a city hall, and you can also hire a lawyer, or you can just do it on your computer. You can decide what money goes to whom. You can even donate to charity if you want, and you can also set an emotion with this will, which apparently will impact how Sims react. However, Sims are supposed to react to wills independently as well. So for example, if a Sim is materialistic, they're going to be really ticked off if they don't get any simoleons. And they, of course, have different reactions to dying based on traits and relationships, but that was part of the base game update. Overall, I think the will has some good potential. They kept saying storytelling potential. They said that about 20 billion times. Something that really needs to be explored more deeply in a deep gameplay dive or let's plays would be the Soul's Journey. And I think this really is one of the main features of this pack. Basically, with the Soul's Journey, you can complete aspirations, but also bucket list items. And as you complete these items, it unlocks and it gives you new bonuses. Half of it, though, is unfinished business. Now, unfinished business you can only get into, of course, if you die and you choose to become a ghost. Bucket lists are major life goals based upon their traits, their life aspirations, their relationships, and supposedly they are fairly dynamic. You're going to get different bucket list items depending on the sim, and it's not going to be the same ones all the time. It's also going to even adjust to life events. One example they gave is that if a sim already has a kid, their new goal might be to have a second child rather than just a generic have a kid. Now, it is supposed to disrupt normal play patterns, and there is cross-pack compatibility too. One example they gave is your sim might want to go camping in Granite Falls. They even had one where they wanted to go on a mission to Batu, which made me laugh. But of course, I do hope this is as personalized and as dynamic as they say. I'm not expecting perfection whatsoever, but I think this definitely has the potential to be either really glitchy or actually pretty meaningful. Overall, they wanted to emphasize it being dynamic and also being personalized to your actual sim. Okay, I have to confess, I was wrong to be too worried about funerals, at least it seems so. You see, funerals aren't really as orchestrated as weddings from My Wedding Stories. They kind of phrase them as more of a wake and people kind of just coming. It's not as formal, and they specifically said sims aren't going to just sit down. Now, honestly, I prefer this style. I do also think they did it in order to avoid some of the problems with My Wedding Stories. You can pick to serve food, light candles, dance. You can have either lighthearted energy or mournful energy. You can have ghosts come to funerals, that could happen. You can even invite ghosts. You can give eulogies, listen to music, instruments, have a moment of silence, and of course mourning, and you can choose what gravestone or urn you want. Now, you are able to set what funeral activities you want in your will, and then the person that holds the funeral for that sim that died can choose to either honor those funeral activities or not honor those funeral activities. You are able to also set the dress code, and happily this actually worked. So honestly, it wasn't really that sims were going and doing specific activities, it was actually a bit more freeform, and honestly, they did kind of pay attention to the mourning, but not everybody did. So take it for what it is, it didn't look like a disaster, it looked fine, and there are some nice customization options. Also, after a funeral, there are potential for different grief outcomes, so you could react to grief in different ways. You might be more stoic, you might be more angry or in denial, and so they didn't really explore that deeply, but I am interested, of course, to see how those outcomes differ from Sims and also based upon personal relationships. One of the new aspirations is a ghost historian, and with a ghost historian, you can write horror novels, you can research the occult. There's also a lot of different mysteries, I think, in the world and lore. One is you want to contact with Edith. So Edith is this girl who haunts the well of longing and regret, and she can pretty much kind of attack you, make you pass out. Yes, she's pretty terrifying, and definitely I think this was taken from a certain horror movie. You can let me know in the comments below if you think you know what it is. For festivals, there is this Family Day festival. These specters kind of hang out. There are the swings, of course, and those could swing on their own accord. There's also these beautiful statues, and I think it does have a lot of ambiance. Of course, I'm not saying it's going to be milling with activity, but at least they're trying to do something a little bit different, even if the idea is somewhat repetitive across different packs. There is the Spectre family household, and it has a creepy basement, and near that, there is a crypt you can explore. At the crypt, you have the choice to join the Undertaker career, and this career is a funeral director or mortician. Now keep in mind, these career paths are actually rabbit holes, while the other career that comes with this pack is actually active. I think adding an active career and also a rabbit hole career is actually quite clever. The Reaper career, and I apologize, I probably don't have the correct name, but it is an active career and it's an active day. You have unique activities every day. You do go to, of course, the headquarters. There's kind of some office work where you're researching and kind of trying to prep. There's even a dummy you can practice on for preparing for reaping. And then you get your challenges and assignments. It basically pops up and you can take it and you travel to that location. You'll see a bunch of dead Sims and you have to investigate their death, and also you have to reap their souls. Now, interestingly enough, these sims are randomly generated, at least in this part, but there is a possibility there are going to be sims you see from your own save files, and in that case, you do have the option to spare them. I could see this getting kind of messy. I think it's a really interesting concept, but I'm not really sure how I feel about this career overall, I'll be honest. I think it's unique, so I do appreciate that part. And honestly, I would have to play it to see if it feels repetitive and also if it causes, of course, any problems. He has a different name. He's a teen that lives with his mom, Olive Spectre, and he is, of course, the child of Grimm. They didn't go into any more details, but it does sound like there's supposedly a storyline along there. Of course, it is Sims 4, so just keep that in mind. Now, honestly, I know a lot of people were excited for tarot cards, and it was done a little bit differently than I expected. Tarot cards actually are kind of like an errand, so they actually have mini favors and they're mini quests you get. Each neighborhood has a place where you can actually get these, and there's lore that you can learn about. There's the Order of Lenore, and it does remind me a lot of cottage living, actually, in a weird sort of way, just with, of course, a very different tone. There is a basic tarot card deck, though, in Build Buy that you can just buy, and with this, you can draw readings. It is unclear to me exactly the impact of these readings, but at least it is there. Of course, what would a pack about life and death be without more ways to die? You can die in your sleep, especially as an elder, and it's kind of just a gentle animation. You can also really tick off your pet crow, of course, as we already mentioned, and at this time when they were showing all this animation, they told us that you can now challenge Grimm. You can challenge Grimm and you can spar with Grimm with chess or basketball or hopscotch or other activities depending on what packs you own. They did say it is unlikely you will win, but it's a nice added feature. Believe it or not, as long as this live stream was, they didn't go into a lot of detail with ghost powers. So as a playable ghost, you can actually curse people, you can make them scared, you can also play it up and be kinder, you can repair things, you can be neutral and disable different motive drains, and you can do this transcendent woohoo. Now this transcendent woohoo certainly has some pretty interesting animations, and I think this is just another way that they're adding some quirkiness to make this pack also very much Sims-like. What I mean by that is, of course, a pack on dying does sound to some people to be really heavy, and they always add elements of supernatural and levity, I think, to really bring the balance. And to add to that, you can now select your own colors for ghosts, so if you don't want a ghost of a certain color based on mood, you can select whatever color you want, at least as far as the options they give you. Now, we need to talk about getting reborn. You have to complete unfinished business in order to have this option. After you've completed your unfinished business, you have to go over to the bog and you can kind of wander out there, and basically you will just get a simple option to be reborn. When you are reborn, it's going to kick you back to that good old loading screen and into Create a Sim. You are automatically reborn with the same genetics, but you can change your appearance if you want to. Along with this, it just kind of depends on how things went. You might recall past life sentiments and other skills. I don't know exactly how this works because, again, they kind of did it surface level, but it is an interesting concept and it sounds like the experiences do differ based upon how you did. Now, you can also, of course, adjust your relationships, and you can even be reborn as an occult. Basically, you're just choosing who you want to live with and what family you want to be reborn in. I do think this whole concept is interesting. I thought they were going to explain it a little bit more, but still, I think this is another feature that would be great for storytelling as to repeat them. Now, we need to get into cast and build by, and honestly, I'm not going to go into a big overview for this because my concern is gameplay, and I think we have time to go over that later on. But I will say I was pretty impressed with Create a Sim. I know some people thought this looks like other packs, and I understand that completely, but it sounds like a lot of thought went into this. With Create a Sim, they went for different layers, and they also went for sheer materials like satin, and they really focused on symbolic meaning. They included feather collars and also butterfly motifs, skull motifs, even have patterns in the masculine clothes. Overall, honestly, my favorite was the feminine full body. This is no surprise. I love dresses. I think that some of these look absolutely elegant and really striking. However, I do prefer the darker tones almost every single time. As far as kids and toddlers, they have a few assets. We have about a half dozen full body for kids. It's not terrible. you get the hair conversions from the adults. Nothing really super exciting. I do really like this one dress for children. It has like a lace collar. I think it just looks absolutely wonderful. But honestly, I think there are lots of details in terms of these clothes. I personally would use this all the time. Honestly, I do think there's a lot of use you could get out of it. After all, there are different swatches, and although I still think that adult feminine was the strongest, big surprise, I do think masculine was pretty well done too. There's even a new category for ghosts, and there's some pretty interesting new items for ghosts. With these, you do get some like costumey pieces, but you also get some period pieces too. Honestly, I could see this being useful for some people who play challenges like the Decades Challenge. Overall, I'm a huge fan of Create a Sim, and I think they put a lot of time and effort into it. I do think we still need to branch out more in hairstyles though. I'm starting to feel like, especially for masculine Sims, hairstyles are kind of in a rut, and I do understand it can be hard to come up with new ideas, but honestly, I think it's time to play with more textures as well. The world is divided. There is a countryside neighborhood, which is ethereal and it represents balance. There's Morning Vale, which is my personal favorite because it is in Morning Vale where you have Afterlife Anonymous, and I do want to add that the world contains lots built by creators. Those include Crate for Sim, Kate Emerald, Symphony, and Sophie Sims. Overall, collabing with creators I think is always a nice move, and it means we're probably gonna get some pretty awesome builds. Speaking of which, I actually even like the bar in this world. You know me, I actually get kind of sick of bars and nightclubs in Sims 4, but this definitely is very atmospheric. They also showed off a lot more about, of course, build buy, and I'm honestly just going to run footage here because I don't usually have tons of intelligent things to say about build buy. Overall though, I think this pack is actually one of the stronger Sims 4 packs, at least in preview. Honestly, the live stream was quite long, and I think that is a good sign. The live stream was long, yet they were not able to go into detail with a lot of different aspects. And honestly, you could say, oh, they wasted time, but I thought they did fairly well with what they had. Yes, I think overall this was a good sign. Honestly, it seemed pretty functional. They actually decided to play with all packs, which is something I've been wanting them to do for a long time. There's lots of cross-pack compatibility. There's a nice balance between realistic gameplay and occult gameplay. And my deepest fear, which was funerals, turned out to be at least probably okay. I wouldn't say that funerals would be a main draw for me anyway, but at least it seems like they kind of toned down how they did it, and it wasn't modeled exactly like my wedding stories. Yes, I do think there are going to be some problems with it and bugs, so I still would hold off to purchase if you want to be cautious. And I'm sure there's going to be differing opinions about if it has enough gameplay or not, but personally, I think it's looking like one of the better expansion packs we've gotten for a while. So let me know what you think about all this in the comments below. Do you think you're going to buy this expansion pack, wait a while? What do you think about some of the pros and cons? As always, I appreciate you so much. Take care, and I'll see you in the next one.